Lots of people say that political discussions are so unproductive because too many people care too much, but I disagree. I believe that if we begin to encourage more engagement with what's happening in our country, we would be far better off than we are now. I'm Matthew Murphy, and this is Harold from the North. The phrase, I try not to get political, is the get out of jail free card people use when a conversation strays into the realm of something that's considered controversial. Whether it's family gatherings or social events or even casual conversation, people say it isn't civil to discuss the state of the world and stick to topics that won't offend the person that they're talking with. They do this because they fear they'll provoke rage from the people around them by the very mention of a topic that people disagree about. But the tense atmosphere around that which is considered, quote, political is not a coincidence. It's a mixture of natural limitations and direct actions taken with the express purpose of making these discussions a daunting prospect. In short, the goal is to get the average person to shut up, and thus far, it's worked. The average person is not equipped for these conversations, partially because we generally have lost the ability to effectively communicate ideas and debate with one another, but mostly because people don't have the information that they need for those conversations. Our high speed internet world and 24-hour news cycle make it difficult to have all of the information necessary to know what's going on in the country, let alone feel confident enough to debate over it. People are chastised if they aren't aware of every single detail of every single idea, but with so much information going around, much of it gets lost for those who don't spend their entire lives revolving around the news cycle. This then leads to the second problem, which is limited time. With so much information to keep up with, people scarcely have enough time inside their busy schedules to manage it all. When it comes down to a choice between spending time with their family and friends or paying attention to the recent gaffes and comments of policymakers, people tend to choose the former. Because of this, there are only two types of people left who are willing to engage in political discussion: the vocal radicals and the few who feel convicted enough to stand up against them. This is what creates the atmosphere of apathy. People are criticized for not knowing every detail of every issue when they don't have the time to keep up with what's happening in the world. And if they do end up trying to engage in the conversation, they're berated with comments and threats and sometimes face real life consequences because of it. When people feel that the deck is stacked against them, they think trying to engage isn't worth the effort. Trying to keep up is too exhausting. They want to maintain relationships with too many people who freak out if you bring up politics, and their lives are so busy and they're so tired that they surrender their place in the fight and the culture along with it. They spend their time trying to ignore the happenings of the world and to convince themselves that everything is fine as the country, quite literally in some cases, burns down around them. It doesn't have to be like this. We can change the incentive structure of political discussions. The average person is repelled by political discourse because they feel like it's too obnoxious and too toxic to engage with. We have to change our approach to how we go about having political discussions. And I'm by no means trying to align myself with people like Spencer Cox and Jared Polis who just want people to, quote, disagree better. Quite the opposite. Even if we have the most polite and civil debates in the world, there would still be people who advocate for insane, destructive, if not downright evil ideas. I know that both sides make this claim about the other, saying that the other side is perpetuating evil, but the last thing we should do is disengage from the conversation. If you believe in objective morality, both sides cannot be 100% correct, meaning people should try even harder to find the truth in this situation because the risk of the wrong idea being the prevailing one is too high. But instead of being more passionate, governing officials will tell people to agree to disagree and not to worry about it. Because when we aren't paying attention, it means they're free to do, or not to do, whatever they please. Trying to get people to politely disagree isn't enough, if it even helps at all, of which I am not necessarily convinced. We have to give people a banner to rally behind, and that comes in two forms. Firstly, we have to show them that winning is possible. Just this week in Louisiana, a law was passed requiring schools to display the Ten Commandments in every classroom. Reading from an AP article now, they say, quote, proponents said the measure is not solely religious, but it has historical significance. In the language of the law, the Ten Commandments are foundational documents of our state and national government. This law is a great idea, not only from the Christian perspective, but also because it's entirely necessary when discussing the foundations of lawfare to teach about the Ten Commandments. But even if you're not a Christian, this is an excellent example of how to prompt lawmakers to act. This law is far too specific to come about randomly. For a law like this to be put into place, the legislature would have to have the overwhelming feeling that this is what the majority of their population wants. If we follow the example of the people in Louisiana, we would be able to show people who feel like politics isn't worth it that if we continue to emphasize the ideas we believe in and win people to our side, it makes real world changes. But secondly, and more importantly, we have to show people that ideas are worth advocating for. If we really desire the well being of the culture we live in, we should be willing to step up and go to bat for the ideas that will make it better. We can't allow ourselves to be cowed into silence. If we want to enact change into our culture, we have to stand up for it, not ignore it. If we truly want to conserve truth and morality in our lives, we can't be afraid to defend it. This is certainly easier said than done, but there's no alternative. Because in the end, no matter how nicely people try to tell somebody that they're wrong or how far they try to remove themselves from the conversation, the mob always comes. Whether it be through online campaigns or influencing lawmakers to target us, they will always occupy the cultural ground that we give them. If we allow the actions of the mob to run unopposed, we'll be blindsided and the way of life that we value will be stripped away from us. The last thing we should be doing is turning a blind eye. Because in the kingdom of the blind, the one-eyed man is king. That's all I have for today. Thanks for listening, and until next time, farewell. Thanks for listening. Remember to use the links in the description to follow me on social media and wherever you get your podcasts so that you never miss an episode.